Now I've come here to Cortown, I've come to Seal Rescue Ireland, and I want to see what goes on here in this environment. And I'm joined by Melanie Croce, and Melanie is the Executive Director. And first of all, a lot of people don't know there is a seal centre in Cortown, but there is. Tell me, when did it come here?
So Seal Rescue Ireland was originally established 10 years ago in Dingle, and about 5 years ago a storm actually wiped out the center there, and that's when we relocated here in Cortown. So we've been here ever since.
Tell me about the seals now. What kind of creature are they?
So seals are semi-aquatic marine mammals, so they do spend most of their life out at sea, but they breathe oxygen just like we do, and they do come up on land to rest. That's where they rear their young, and it's really important for them to have nice, safe haul-out sites so that they can rest before they go out for a deep dive to catch fish.
Now, like all animals and mammals, they need to be rehabilitated from time to time. What are their enemies in the natural habitat?
Well, for the most part, the seals that we get brought in are the youngest seals, so it happens a lot during pupping season. So with any mammal, the young are the most vulnerable, they're the weakest. So there's a lot of environmental threats that can make it a really hard start to life for these seals. Strong storms is one of them, and this is effect of climate change. Because of the increase in frequency and severity of extreme weather, it puts a lot of stress and pressure on these animals. So especially with the gray seals, when they need to stay nice and safe and dry on land for the first 2 to 3 weeks of life, if there's strong storms that wash them away from their mothers, they can drown, they can get injured, they can become exhausted, and that's when we get a lot of calls. A lot of other threats that face our seals is biodiversity loss, also pollution and plastic pollution, plastics accidentally being ingested, and another big threat is entanglements. So when they get entangled, it can be very life-threatening if they're not rescued in time.
Now, when you get that call, how does somebody notice that the animal is not in great form? Is it because they come onto the beach and they just look a little bit ill? Would that one of the reasons?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that we do, in addition to rehabbing seals, is educating the public on what to look for. So since we are the only seal rescue center in the Republic of Ireland, we're responsible for over 7,000 kilometers of coastline. But we do have a team of trained volunteers. We've got over 1,000 nationwide. So if a seal is reported to us on our 24-hour hotline, we'll send one of our trained volunteers to go check it out. They'll monitor the situation, they'll send us photos, and based on the photos and the description, will determine whether the seal needs to be brought in. Sometimes it's a gray area. Sometimes you don't really know if they would otherwise be fine or if we do need to interfere. The last thing we want to do is lift healthy animals. The mothers in the wild can do a much better job of raising their young than we can, and we don't really have the resources to be taking in animals unnecessarily. So we look for injuries, we look for signs of illness, we look for a very young pup that maybe hasn't been around its mother for a long time. And yeah, we'll just base the determination on that.
And you can find them over in the west coast where it's terribly wild, or on the east coast where it's a little bit milder, and they come here for the rehabilitation.
Absolutely. So we do cover the whole coastline. On the west coast, it's mostly common seals that we get, and here on the east coast, it's mostly gray seals. So during the summer is when the common seals are pupping, so that's when we get a lot of calls from the east coast. And then, of course, during the autumn and winter months is when the gray seals are pupping, so that's when we got a lot of calls around the east coast. And when they get nice and healthy and they're ready to be released back into the wild, we will return them to the same coastline from which they were found. So tomorrow we're taking some seals that have completed their rehabilitation over to Sligo, and we'll be releasing them there. And then the following day, we'll be releasing some seals right here in Cortown.
And what's the reason for that now? Because I could imagine if you released them all in Cortown, they'd probably find their way back to the west coast, or would they?
You know, we don't really know. We would love to do some studies where we can GPS track our seals and see where they migrate, where they go. But unfortunately, we don't have the funding for that. It's about €4,000 per unit for a satellite tracker. So what we use is a simple flipper tag. It's the same thing that farmers use to tag their cattle. So it's a little plastic tag that goes on their flipper, and it's got a unique ID number. And based on that number, we can tell exactly which individual that is. And we will be able to look into our records and our database database and see which animals it is. But they do tend to move around. In fact, we released a seal in Galway last year, and a month later she showed up in Cornwall. So we do maintain really good communication with the network of seal rehabbers in the UK. So if they ever see any of our tagged seals, they'll report it to us, and likewise we'll communicate with them. So we're kind of contributing to that global understanding of marine mammals.
Well, I've never been here before now, but I'm here today and I see the seals. They look to be very happy. Certainly the ones over in the water there, they're playing games and having great fun in the rain. So obviously they're in good form. They're nearly ready to go back from where they came.
Absolutely. So the first step is to stabilize them, and then once they're stabilized, then we'll put them into the kennels. And in the kennels is where they can stay nice and warm. We'll give them a bath part of the day. We'll teach them to eat on their own. Once they're stabilized and eating on their own, they move out to the pools. And this is where they learn social behaviors. They learn how to compete. These behaviors are really important for release into the wild. But yeah, as you can see, the seals in the pools, they're just putting on weight. So as soon as they're big enough, we'll be able to release them. But they are closely related to dogs, so they do have a lot of personality characteristics similar to dogs. You can hear they like to vocalize, they like to talk to each other, they do like to play. Some are more aggressive, some are friendlier, but it is important to remember that these are wild animals, and we want to maintain their wildness because the ultimate goal is to get them back out into the wild where they belong. So we don't handle them unless we absolutely have to. And the last stage of the rehab process is behind me here. You can see a completely fenced-in pool, and that's the pre-release pool, and that's where we really kind of sever contact between humans and the seals. And after a few weeks there, they do have that healthy fear of humans, and that's when we'll be able to release them and not worry about them swimming up to people on the beach.
And roughly how many seals have you got here at the moment?
We have about 36 at the moment. We had 2 new intakes last night. This is our busiest time of the year. The most we've ever had at a single time was after Hurricane Ophelia. We had 66 seals in our care, and that was a lot of work. But we do have a small facility here with limited capacity, and we never know when another strong storm is going to hit and where we'll get lots and lots of calls. So we always have to be prepared.
And storms knock them about. They get separated and all sorts of things happen out in the wild.
Yeah, absolutely. So sea level rise and coastal erosion, especially here on the Wexford coast, it's a big problem because the seals need to be able to rest on land. It's very important. But when there's strong storms that come, then the high tide line, the surf actually comes beyond the high tide line. So there's nowhere for them to go and safely hide out from the storms. So it can batter them around. It can be really exhausting. It can injure them. So we do get lots of calls following storms.
And you're here at Cortown, and can the public come and see the seals?
Absolutely. We're open 7 days a week. We always have to be here caring for the seals, so we're always open to the public as well. It's free entry, and we'll give everyone a tour. We can talk about the conservation and threats to seals, how we can all act more sustainably in our daily lives to protect the habitat, therefore protecting the seals. And then you'll get to meet the seals. You can see all of the seals in care, learn their stories, and if you want, you can even adopt a seal.
And climate change now is very much on the radar, and we get a lot of public information coming, and there's even more on the way. What advice would you give to members of the public in making life better for the seals?
That is a very good question. I think a really important thing is that we all make a difference. Every decision we make really impacts the world around us. So we do encourage people to reduce plastic consumption, use reusable items, and reduce packaging. Another thing you can do is shift towards a plant-based diet. So we promote something called Meatless Monday. Taking meat off your plate one day out of the week is like taking your car off the road for a whole week. Support renewable energy, walk, use public transportation, electric vehicles, try to just stay away from fossil fuels. I know that it's a very, very big thing, and it kind of seems like we're all helpless in this, but we're solution-based here. We don't want to just talk about the problems, we want to talk about the solutions. But basically, if all of us use our collective purchasing power, we really can influence change.
And you have an ideal location here. We're in woodland, trees and shrubbery and greenery all around us. The ocean is just across the, a couple of yards away. Yeah. So it's the perfect environment to be rehabilitated.
Absolutely. So you can come and see the seals. You can take a beautiful walk in the forest, check out the beaches. Yeah, it's a great place to be. And I'm glad you mentioned trees, because planting trees is a really big thing that everyone can do. Carbon is sequestered in trees. It also filters the air, it filters the water, and it creates habitat for biodiversity on land and at sea. So we do have lots of tree planting events. We had one last year, and we do like to acknowledge that what we do on land really impacts the ocean. So if everyone planted trees, then I think we'd make this a much better and safer environment for not only the seals, but all the other wildlife, and ourselves included.
Well, certainly you deserve to be commended for looking after these little guys and rehabilitating them and getting them back out to the wild. And they're here for several weeks. There's a lot of work in it, so you need a lot of, you need a lot of bodies, don't you? Do you use volunteers?
Absolutely. We rely very, very heavily on volunteers. We have about 20 full-time staff that are mostly volunteers that come from all over the world to spend about 3 months with us as interns. We also take Rescue Network volunteers, of course. So we have trainings all over the country about once a month. So if you find our website or to follow us on Facebook, you'll see when those upcoming trainings are where you can join our team. We also have behind-the-scenes experiences. So it's called Rescuer for a Day, and members of the public are invited to come spend a day with us working aside our animal care team and working with animals and really just learning all the work that goes into rehabbing these animals. They spend about 3 to 4 months in our care, and it is constant work. So we're very, very dedicated to getting them nice and healthy, but it's really it's something that we really like to publicly engage people with. It's something that we can all take part in.
And do you get school groups and young people coming along?
Absolutely. We always love to have school groups come. We also do a marine conservation roadshow, so we'll bring our presentation to schools. We also have corporate volunteer groups, so different company teams can come and spend the day with us, get the full presentation about their work, also get to work with the seals and do some maintenance and kind of get your hands dirty for the day. But there's lots of opportunities to get involved.
Well, you do a great job here, and Melanie Croce, good luck with Seal Rescue Ireland, and thanks for talking to us.
All right. Thank you so much.